Hello and welcome to Transplant's Take on Sport. My name's Lewis Daniels and joining me today is liver transplant recipient and Nottingham Transplant Football Club player Daniel Barnes. Daniel opens up about his experiences with primary sclerosing cholangitis, liver failure, having a liver transplant and recovering during a global pandemic. He also tells me about his return to full fitness and playing football again after his transplant, as well as the mental benefits of playing sport with other transplant recipients. If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure you press subscribe or follow wherever you normally listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to follow the podcast on social media, all the links will be in the show notes. Before we get into this episode, I'd like to say another huge thank you to Neon Cricket, who very kindly sponsored me once again for the 2022 season, and have given me a code to share with you all that's slightly different to the one you may have heard before. If you use the code TTOSPORT, you'll receive a 20% discount on their entire range. That's TTOSPORT for 20% off everything at neoncricket.co.uk, and the website and the code are in the show notes in case you want to go straight from there to the website. I've been using their kit and it's genuinely the best I've ever used, so if you play cricket, why not grab yourself a saving of 20% ready for the new season. If there's a friend, family member, teammate, opposition player, a player you coach, or anyone else you'd like to share the code with, then please feel free to do so. Thank you once again to Neon Cricket, and let's get back to the podcast. Daniel Barnes, welcome to Transplant's Take on Sport.
Hi Lewis, are you right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Been better. One of them months, I think.
People can't see the video for this, but you are wearing a sling for an injury that happened quite recently at the England Transplant Football Trials. I'll let you do the talking. How did it happen?
So we've been in the trials about an hour and a half, and we just gone on to do some fitness tests. So we was doing shuttle runs. It was essentially 7 shuttle runs at different distances, and I got onto the last one, probably 5 to 10 meters from the end. I lost my balance, and just like me with my bad luck, I went over straight onto my shoulder and I broke my collarbone. So that ruled me out of any football for the next 2 months, and also resulted in me cancelling my holiday, which my wife was not very happy about.
It's a painful one in several ways, that one. It's not a nice injury, having done it before. It's one of those that we were saying off air beforehand. When you're sleeping and you move your arm too much, it feels like, it's hard to demonstrate without using my hands here, but it feels like it's the bone's pulling apart if it's clean through, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think I've had a good night's sleep since I've had it done. Every movement is magnified by the pain. You might feel like you moved your arm a whole meter. It might move a centimeter, but just because you're feeling every last millimeter of that movement in your broken bone, it's just 10 times worse.
Obviously, it's fairly recent that you've done it, but have you got a rough idea of when you might be able to start building your fitness up and playing again?
So they've said 6 to 8 weeks by the time it's healed. So it'll be 2 weeks this Saturday coming up. So hopefully another 4 to 6 weeks. I might try and get on the bike. Before that, I've got a bike at home. Might try and do a bit more fitness with that. But as in going playing football and combat sports, probably going to give it another at least the full 8 weeks, maybe a couple more just to get back fitness wise.
Yeah, it sounds like the right thing to do, especially with whatever your doctor says. I would go for, obviously, but yeah, I mean, hopefully you are back soon. And do you have plans to try and get into the England team again?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to be able to go back to St George's Park for another trial, but I know they're doing drop-in sessions. They're going to do one once a month, so I want to jump onto that and hopefully get into contention for the call-up. I know the guys are going out to Holland at the end of May this month. I'd have loved to have gone, even if it was just supporting or in the development team. So it's kind of losing the holiday was the main thing when I broke my collarbone, but then not being able to go and represent my country, which I think is probably one of the best things you can do as a sportsman or in any element to represent your country at any level, doing anything is a phenomenal achievement. So hopefully I do have that chance in the near future.
Fingers crossed that you can get back and do get into the team. And the reason you're eligible for the team is because you've had a liver transplant. So when did you first find out that something was wrong with your liver?
It was quite a weird one. So in 2017 I was getting married, and I started to lose weight or think I was losing weight for the wedding. I basically picked up my football, started to cut out all the junk food, and then we got to the wedding day. It was fine. Lost my weight. I was happy. Then I kind of carried on my football, but I wasn't so careful on what I was eating. But I was still dropping weight, so I ended up dropping about 4 stone
Wow.
in about 8 months. And it got to a point where my wife and my mum had a conversation. Says, "Oh, we need to get him in. We think he's got an eating disorder." I was like, "I haven't got an eating disorder. It's just not hungry." So I go for a blood test, and I went for a blood test on Boxing Day or the day after that, and I remember it clear as day. I get a phone call. Just about it was the 30th of December. Get a phone call, and it's the doctor. Who says, "Oh, where are you?" I says, "I'm just at home, just about to go to cinema." And he goes, "No, you're not." I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You need to get to hospital now." And I says, "Can I not come out to the cinema because it was the new Star Wars film was coming out?" So it's like, I want to watch it before I see the spoilers. So it's like, "No, you need to come in now and don't go for A&E, go through AMRA, and then we'll go from there." So I go in, had the blood test, and after about 5 or 6 hours of waiting, the consultant comes up to me and says, "Right, have you had these other symptoms?" And it was a case of, "Have you had itchy skin?" And I kind of thought, well, yeah, but I don't know if that could be anything. That could be stuff in the air. That could be washing powder, new clothes. Do you know what I mean? It could be anything like that.
Yeah.
But when they started adding up the symptoms, so you obviously I had a little bit of jaundice in the skin, the itchiness, I was quite snappy as well. I was quite aggravated. Now everybody says that I'm an angry man, but this was just kind of above and beyond. And when they said they linked all these together, says, "Oh, we believe you've got an illness called primary sclerosis cholangitis, which is shortened to PSC." I'm not going to make you say that anymore because it is a mouthful. It took me about best part of 6 months from my diagnosis to repeat it. So that involved me staying in hospital for about a week, having quite a few tests, and they confirmed it. Now, the initial diagnosis was, we give you 10 to 15 years before transplant. So that's where I went from there, kind of. So that was 2018. 2018 was all right. Managed to get on holiday, go away, and then towards back in 2018, it was something wasn't being right. So I started to get a bit more jaundice. The itchiness was coming back, the fatigue. It was just getting worse. So I went back in to see my consultant. Says, "This is what's happening. Where do we go?" So I'm going to do some bile duct dilation, which is they put a tube down your throat. They put a balloon in, try and open your bile duct so they can help the flow, which is basically reduces your jaundice and your scrosing of your liver. Uh, did that a few times, didn't really work. So they went in with a stent. But what I said they did that around Christmas and then into February. But what they found out was that I was never going back to my previous levels. So I was kind of, every time I was getting better, I was at higher. And what I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but it's more of a high level of illness. So
Mhm.
my base level was kind of more close to illness and everything else. So I think I had 4 stents in total. And I remember being in hospital one day, and I said to my mum and I said to my wife that were there, because the consultant came around and says, "Look, I can't do this anymore." Says, "I can't keep going to hospital. I can't take a week off work because I get ill after it." I said, "We need to see what's next." He says, "Right, we'll get you in. We'll get you and you'll come see the transplant team, and we'll go from there." So go see the transplant team. That says, "Right, we want to bring you down to Cambridge. Um, we want to do some tests on you, see what your viability is, if you're going to be a viable candidate, and they go from there." So I had that, and then around June, end of June, beginning of July, I got put on the transplant list.
It's quite quick considering that you've been told that sort of 10 to 15 year wait before a transplant. It's something I can relate to through mine's kidney, but obviously you look things up online, not that you should, because everything seems the worst on there, but you think, I thought, I'm pretty stable here, I've got maybe 10, 15 years, like you said, and then suddenly it comes round. So how long after your diagnosis was it before your liver actually failed?
So I think the worst I got, it was November, end of November 2019, and I'd gotten really yellow, like this is Homer Simpson kind of like colours. It was
Mm.
really bad. I remember going into hospital when I went in on the Saturday, so I spent the Saturday, Sunday, Monday there, and then Tuesday it was a transplant team. I remember, and it was probably, I don't know, it's a 2 minute walk normally to get from the ward to the transplant department meeting area. It took me about half an hour to walk, and I was like, I don't feel too good at this. Like really, really kind of exacerbated from the walk. Go in to see the team, and they went, "Right, your blood levels are at the worst they've ever been." Um, and we had a few chats between the doctors talking, and he says, "How do you feel?" And I says, "Look, I says, I can't cope with this anymore." And I says that the way that it's going, I says, I don't think you're going to do it in time. I says, I honestly don't think you're going to do it in time. I got really upset. Again, my wife and my mum have been the biggest amount of support I've had throughout this whole thing. Without them two, I couldn't have done it. So they were there. They've come to all my appointments with me. They were sat there. They were crying. And I says, look, I says, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be taking any more time up, but I don't think you're going to get it. I don't think it's going to come in time. I just want to leave. I want to get out of hospital and I want to go. And 9 days after that, I got the phone call to say that my liver was ready. Now, they did tell me after that I was put on an urgent list. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I was on the next available one, but I was put on a higher category than what I was previously because I think, and looking at the time scale of when it was, with how close we came, my recovery came into the pandemic. Then going into the pandemic, I think if I didn't have it then, I don't think I'd have had it before the pandemic, and I don't know where I'd be if I'm honest. So yeah, I was very very lucky. And now people do ask, why do you say you're lucky that you've had a transplant? Well, my state was I got the phone call at 7 o'clock at about 22 minutes past 7 to be precise. So I will never forget that time. And 5 hours later, I was in the operating theatre. Now I've heard stories of some people that have waited. They've been on the ward for 48 hours. They've been down. They've been prepped for surgery, and it's not been able to. And that's how I look at it now. That how lucky was I that I had a phone call and was in the operating theatre for within 5 hours. It was amazing. The only downside I will have of it was I did quite clearly ask my surgeons if I could be woken up that night because it was my team Forest were on TV. So I was hoping, so I says, if you can make sure that I'm awake for 7 o'clock so I can get around, I can watch them play their game. The day after it was the Joshua, one of his Joshua fights, then it was a Manchester Derby in the F1. So I was like, just make sure I'm awake for some of these and I'll be happy. I woke up after the final lap of the F1, so I missed absolutely everything. But I still shouldn't moan. I was in a coma for about 48 hours, 48 72 hours. It depends how I look at it. So yeah, it was just the luckiest person in the world for it, if I'm honest. I says it. I could have been one of them people that ran into the pandemic, and when they stopped him, you don't know what would happen, would you? It's one of them things.
Yeah, the timing on that it's key. And like you say, some people, like you say, why you think you're lucky, but you're right. It's just the time. It could be anyone. There's so many people, more people than maybe a lot of people would realise. Are in the position that you've been in. I was almost in. Thankfully, mine was a living donor. It was not that time waiting for the call. But there's a lot to take in mentally when you're waiting. The way you were at the time, thinking this might not happen. The feeling when you get the call must be unbelievable.
I remember I was in my old house. I moved house since then, but I remember where I was stood. I remember what I did. I remember exactly how that night went because I remember my wife. She was at the gym and she for this one time only she'd not taken a personal phone out. She took a work phone out, and I says, and luckily that I had both numbers saved, and I went, "You need to come home." And she managed to get home from the gym, and I was still stood in the same place. Like it was complete and utter shock that it was actually going to happen because you can prepare yourself that this transplant's going to happen and how long it's and you know what you're going to do and how you're going to be proactive and you're going to get down there, you're going to be happy. But I froze for a good 20 minutes in that same spot. My wife came, even though my wife would come home, she went, "You're going to get ready." She's going to get, "I'm going to get ready." She'd gone upstairs, had a shower, come back down to me, and I was still in the same place. I was that shocked, and it was that taken aback by me. It wasn't fear that it was the fact that it's actually going to happen. And
Yeah,
I was never scared of it. I was never worried about what was going to happen. I knew that it was going to once it was going to happen, it'll be a million times better. And no one, if you haven't been through it, like anybody that's livers, kidneys, hearts, lungs, once you kind of get back on your feet after that, you're like, this is so much better. Even in your recovery
exactly. Yeah,
stage, it's people won't understand what we've been through and what other transplant recipients have been through to realize just to be able to get up out of bed after the transplant. It's such an amazing feeling, and yeah, it's just that feeling, and people won't understand it. People think it's just it's just another operation. But it's not. Essentially my whole life was given back to me by somebody's generous gift, which I can never repay. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them things.
You have that moment of realization afterwards where you think you don't. Well, in my case anyway, I didn't realize how ill I was until afterwards because I hadn't really done it. It had affected me, but I still thought, oh, fine. But then every little milestone that you get after the surgery, like you said, getting out of bed, for example, you realize it's a reality check how lucky you are to be there. And I can remember passing water, urinating is key after a kidney transplant to show some form of success in it working. And my bladder had got blocked, and they'd put this three-way catheter up there, and then the moment where I'd be able to, I'd weed myself for the first time, not weed myself, but do it into a bottle for
Yeah,
the first time. I remember just going, "Yeah, I did it! I did it! I did it!" And it's little things like that, isn't it?
like it says, it might seem like nothing to other people, but do you know, like it says, one of the big things for me was being able to walk down to the shop, being able to not to say, "Oh, Fran, can you go grab me a drink from the shop?" I want, you know what, I want to be able to get out, and even if I was using a walk-in frame or even going in a wheelchair, just be able to get down there and then get a drink. You're thinking, that's it, I'm out the hospital bed, I'm off the ward for a minute, I'm fine, I can do this. And what you said there, you don't think you realise how ill you are, but I've got photos of pre-transplant when I was in the coma. I look at it and I was thinking, that can't be me. I can't be this well after
Mm.
being that ill. And you also appreciate how ill you was because you kind of got a smoke screen in front of yourself when you are that ill to protect yourself. Like, you don't want to believe you're that ill. You're thinking, oh yeah, it's not as bad as it is. But when you've had the transplant, I says, even going to the toilet yourself, getting out of the hospital bed to coming home, it's like, be able to seeing this as a milestone shows how ill I was, and it's just it's the feeling that you can't describe. You can't describe it
Yeah.
because it's that it's the self proudness you have of yourself, and just like the happiness and the elation that you've got that makes you feel so much better about yourself.
Hmm. And you mentioned earlier on that you in that position because of the generosity, that somebody else had said they would donate their organs when they die. I know a lot of people get in contact with the family of the donor, or some like to, some don't. Have you? Is that something you've done or want to do?
It's something I want to do. I think, especially over the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, I didn't want to kind of write to someone and say, "Oh, thank you for your generous gift," but all I've done is sat at home for the last 2 years and not been able to do anything. I want to kind
Yeah.
of go and say, "By the way, I've been able to do this. I've been able to, if I was lucky enough to be chosen for, in transplant football, to represent my country, to if I went to the World of the Transplant Games, or just something, even like I said, I've represented my hospital. I want to have something like that in it to say." to to make sure they know that it hasn't gone to waste. If you know what I mean. Not that I
Hmm.
feel that it's gone to waste, but I want them to know that how much more than it is than just an organ. Because
Yeah.
because like I said before, some people don't appreciate how much just that organ is. It's not just another operation. It's a new way of life. Yeah, you have to go to the hospital every so often. You have blood tests. You're on your constant medication, but that's giving you a new life. And I want to be able to show that this new life that I've been given is being lived kind of to the max, and being able to prove that this is what you've done. I couldn't have done this without you.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely. And sport has been a part of your life since you transplant. We've played football together. You went along to the England trials. How often were you playing sport before your illness? Was it a large part of your life?
I don't play in an 11-a-side team. I just play five-a-side, and I was playing probably 2-3 times a week. Um, and I was playing that probably to a couple of weeks before my transplant. That's before I got admitted into hospital, which I spoke about earlier. And I remember a lad, he basically turned around to me and says, "Do you feel okay?" And I said, "I don't really feel too good." And he says, "Just take a minute on the side of the pitch and just take a breath, because you don't look." He said, "You look like it's going to pass out, and obviously your skin colour's not the greatest." So I got to about 2 weeks of playing. I was playing 2-3 times a week, and obviously with my recovery, I kind of went through the recovery, and as soon as I came, about 2 months after operation, I went to the gym, started going to the gym and doing very minimal stuff. So I might walk a kilometre on the treadmill. I might do ride 2 kilometers on the bike, and they might do 10 lengths or something in the pool just to get me started on that. But the problem with my recovery was, or not problem, probably helped in some aspects might have helped me. We hit the pandemic, so all the gyms were closed, I wasn't able to go back to football. But that
Yeah.
kind of might have given me a bit more time to recover, because my scar, they've been in that scar. I've got quite a big scar that's been opened up 4 or 5 times through different operations.
Right.
So I think with me having that extra 2-3 months through the pandemic to heal up, to make sure that I'm right, I was able to do a bit more quicker after. We generally started to be allowed to have more than our one exercise a day. So you could go out for a walk, or I might go out for a run during lunch, or I might go on a bike ride to see my grandparents or something. Then I could add a bit more confidence in my scar and my body because I had that extra time to heal.
Confidence is massive, and like you say, making sure that you are right, taking that extra time because you're effectively forced to. You can then you then hit it properly and get on with recovering and improving. I know I'd hit 6 months by the time that happened, but it does help because you don't get ahead of yourself too much. And you mentioned the scar there opened up 4 or 5 times. Did you have some complications afterwards?
So I've had previous surgeries because I had ulcerative colitis. So I had my large intestine. How that might be wrong. I do apologise if anybody's listening and is screaming at the phone now saying that's not right. But I've had part of my colon removed. I've had my gallbladder, appendix, and obviously my liver's gone. So I've had a few operations with that, and then after my initial transplant, I went back onto the ward, and there was an issue with my blood pressure. It wasn't kind of regulating, so they went in, they did an MRI scan. They said, right, they took my wife in and said, look, the liver's not taking to his body at the minute, so we've got to reopen him up, but there's a chance that he might not pull through. We don't know what's happening with the liver. So basically, they kind of told my wife that as I was getting wheeled to surgery. Now, got me back in, opened me up, checked everything out, and it just, I don't know what, they might have tightened a stitch up or something, and it all started working fine. And I always remember the surgeon. Now, he didn't have to do this, but the surgeon rang my wife at 10:30 at night to say that I was fine. Now, she wasn't allowed to. So that was, my wife will always remember that phone call she had for the surgeon to take the time out after he'd been in surgery with me all day to say, right, he's fine now. He's going to be fine. And then I spent the day after that in the coma, and the day after that I woke up. So yeah, I've had a bit of trauma there, and I think that, but like I said, having that essentially 6 months with no hard exercise to get that base layer of kind of healing done, it allowed me to go out and hit it a bit harder, a bit more going forward.
Given that, was there a point where you thought that you'd reached your pre-transplant fitness levels or even exceeded them?
I think, see, I can't remember much now. I don't know if it's the same with you, but I can't really remember much about pre-transplant because that's kind of a bad memory, and there's something in the mind that forgets the bad memories when you've got the good memories.
Some of it's a blur.
Yeah, so I can remember sometimes struggling at football, and yeah, the first couple of months, the first couple of games when I started playing again were a bit tough. But then I found that I wasn't like near enough collapsing after games anymore. I was not collapsing, but I was just that tired after a game. I felt that my general fitness was a lot better, and I was able to kind of do more exercise during the week. So where I'd probably been able to do only two or three games, at one point I was doing 4 games a week plus a 5K run and then a bike ride. So, and I wasn't as tired because with PSC, one of the main symptoms is fatigue. So if you go do an hour football, I was straight into bed, or well, I have a shower straight into bed, and I'll sleep through to the next morning. That's 12 hours sleep, and I don't know how you can get 12 hours sleep, but I was still tired after, and that was a part of it. So it was part of it was like I could go play football tonight, but then I'm just pushing on the tiredness on tomorrow and tomorrow. So I had to kind of minimize it a bit more pre-transplant. But as I say now, it's probably the fittest I've ever been.
Quite a few people have said that. Some have struggled to get the fitness back, but quite a few have exceeded the point they were at before the transplant. Do you think it's a case of having obviously a newfound appreciation for life, but more hunger to exercise and look after yourself and maintain where you are?
I think it's a mixture of both. I have a lot better appreciation for life. I think one of the things I did learn about being on the list is that call's going to come whatever you're doing. I did spend a lot of time kind of, oh, should we go here? No, I don't want to go there in case I get the call. Or should we do this? Oh, no, we can't do this because of the call. So I think what I've learned is just go watch football, go to a football game, go away for the weekend or something. And then if you want to go and exercise and you want to go and, like I played in a few charity games pre-transplant, and I'm going to do a few post-transplant. It's just go and do it. There's no point holding stuff back now, and that goes for sports, social. Well, I'm married, but I was going to say love life, just like that. It's just getting out there and don't let it dictate to you. Your illness don't let illness dictate you anymore. If you want to go out and run a marathon, not my bag, but go and do it. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing stopping you now. You know that you've been at the worst. You've been at the worst you've ever been, and you pulled through it. So you
Yeah,
just go and do stuff like that.
it's a good attitude to have, and I think I've said this a lot of times with a lot of people on here, but it's the community and the way people are once you've been through this experience. Hopefully, people can take things or take inspiration from what you've said, your attitude, the attitude of other people who've been on here, because it's a great community to be a part of, and we've spoken a lot today about it takes a big mental toll going through what you've been through, I've been through, so many others have been through, and there's a difference between running and playing football. I know it's maybe less contact in five-a-side and in a transplant or pan disability sport, but mentally, were there any barriers to starting to play again once you got back through a certain point in the pandemic and you sort of, like you say, being confident in your body?
Yeah, I think you're always going to be worried until you get that first hit, whether it's a ball hitting your scar, if it's somebody hitting you, or what. And it's if you're playing a contact sport, if you're playing a sport like football, it's always going to happen at one point or another. I think once you've had it done, you're fine with that. I was a bit nervous to start with, but I thought if I'm gonna try and play sport and play, especially football, you can't. If you're playing in five-a-side, you do rotational goalkeeper. You can't jump out of the shot, jump out the way of the shot because it might hit your scar. So it's one of the things that I had to get used to with the fact. And I says, right, it's going to happen at one point, or I'm going to get tackled by someone, and then just go from there. And as soon as I got that into my head, I was just happy to go about it. Yeah, it was painful when I got the first ball hit my scar. That was painful, and I did go down in a heap. I was like one of the Premier League footballers who went down diving. I was actually hurt, but then after that, nothing seemed as bad because that initial one is always your worst. And it's the same with tackles. Someone might shoulder barge you, or someone might, as they're running past you, they might catch you in the stomach. Yeah, it hurt, but now it's happened. It's not holding me back anymore. I always knew the initial ones were going to be the worst.
And have you had to adapt in any way? Sounds like maybe not, but such as, for example, trying to think what other people have said. This is more, I suppose it would work for liver as well. Running, but having your arm near that area to think if it's good, I'd rather it hit that, or turning, like if you're going to block a shot, for example, turning so that the opposite side is facing the ball.
I do tend to turn when I go to block. I kind of tend to turn away, so my scar goes down centre line scar to my right hand side. So I always tend to like lead with my left side if need be. But yeah, it's one of them things. You know what you know how it's sometimes it's subconscious. You just do it subconscious.
Yeah,
Subconsciously you do it. Like someone has a shot, you won't realize it, but your hands down across your scar, or you might run on. Say if you're going to tackle someone, you might run on their right hand side. So if they kind of fling their arm out, they're hitting your left hand side.
yeah,
But I don't make a concerted effort to do it. It's just whatever like subconsciously happens now.
it's completely natural.
Yeah.
How important mentally was it to return to football after your transplant, and especially joining Nottingham Transplant Football Club, which maybe having more of an impact on your mental state, playing with other transplant recipients who know what you've been through?
I think footballers. I've always loved football since I can remember. I don't know when the first match was. I remember I went to watch a match. I think I was about 5 with my dad, but I can really start remembering around the 2000, especially 2001 or 2002, when I remember vividly watching David Beckham score that free kick against Greece, and I was like, "That's it. I'm hooked. I'm going to watch every
Yeah,
single game now that I can watch," and I still do it now. During the pandemic and during my recovery, when I wasn't able to play, I watched it, and
mm,
it's just that if you're playing, it's an hour. If you're going and watching football, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, where you just don't have to worry about anything else in the world, where you can literally just go and enjoy yourself, and either you're watching the football, or you're playing it, or you're cheering on other people. And especially, like I mentioned, they're playing with other people that have had transplants, especially the NOTS transplants team. It's talking to people. There's a lot more camaraderie. They're more like support you. So if you're kind of a bit, if you're holding yourself, they know, all right, he might have banged himself there. So they kind of said, right, just take 5, we'll bring somebody else on, go from there. Whereas if you do it on a normal 5-a-side or 6-a-side, they don't care. they just see it as an operation. They just see, oh, just get on with it. Whereas the compassion that our community has for each other, we never pin the blame on someone. We never point a finger. We're always there to help one another out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing that helps. It's not you don't have no one, and I've seen this in the game I've played, and then the trials. There's not one criticism from our players, from people from our community. Now there's a lot of criticisms from other people that don't tend to it, especially if you're playing in a league five-a-side. Somebody you're playing against, and they hit you and you go down. They're like, "What's he doing? Why is he diving around?
Yeah.
He looks a bit of a fool." But little they know that you've got a scar that runs across the stomach, and even in the littlest touch will affect you.
It sets your mind going.
Yeah. So but like I says, the being able to play football with people who have been through the same kind of things, it's just great. It's you look out for one another. You know, like the first game we played, we all knew what our strengths and weaknesses were now, and you know how to look out for your players. Now, if you know that there's somebody that's quite reckless on the other team, you kind of make sure that you protect your team against him. You don't let them steam into the back of him when he's got the ball, or you don't pass it so he's going to have to. This guy's going to cane him or something. You make sure you look after your team, and like I said, it might be in other teams like 11-side teams, but I don't see it on the 5-side pitch.
Everyone's got each other's back, and we've said this a lot on here in the past, but from you, which is still, because of the pandemic, relatively new, like I am, to this world, this new group of people. But it is a family, isn't it? It's a big
Yeah,
family feel.
yeah. Like I said, it's I don't know. Simon's been on here before, and I spoke to my transplant team, and I said, look, who do I speak to about the transplant games? And they says, oh, right, this is Simon. Speak to Simon. So I spoke to Simon. Says, do you like football? Yeah. You need to come down to this. You need to do this. I'll sort this all out for you. And as soon as I'd not spoke to Simon ever before this, but as soon as I spoke to him, told him what I wanted to do with the transplant games and playing football, he was like, right, you're in it now. You're one of us. You're not leaving.
Yeah.
We've got your back. We'll support you. We'll help you go on this. We'll get you to the England trials. We'll get you to, then we'll go to the transplant games. Then you might be to the Europeans, and then maybe you go to the Worlds. Now, the Europeans, I think, are in Oxford this year, and then next year
Yep.
the Worlds are in Australia. Now, for me to be able to travel, if I was lucky enough to be able to pick, just thinking you could go to Australia to represent your country, that's ridiculous, isn't it? When you look at
Yeah.
where you was 4 years ago, when you was at your lowest point, and now thinking, right, I'm going to go across the world. It's crazy, and it's almost, as I said, Simon, yourself, Ben, who was on here the other week. You kind of they're all pulling each other in together to help each other. They've always got your back. They'll always say how we can improve, how we can do better, and it's just so much better than playing with random people. There's that like I said, it's much more of a community and family feel.
Definitely. You've mentioned a lot in there. Simon, who you'll be able to hear from if you listen to, I want to say episode 3 of series 1. If you'd like to hear more about Simon, his journey with his kidney transplant, which is a very good listen, I would say. There's a lot of things to look at and learn from and be inspired by. And there, as has been today, and in every other episode that we've done on here, you've mentioned the transplant games there, Oxford European Games this year, where there'll be a GB football team, and then the Worlds next year in Australia. Have you got plans to go this summer if you're fit enough and in the
Yeah,
future? And what sort of events would you like to take part in?
I won't mind some of the racket sports. I will do the football. So as long as my shoulder is or my collarbone is fine, I will be going in July this year. And then we'll see what goes from there. If I'm lucky enough to be selected for the Europeans, I'll go there. And if I am even lucky enough to go to Australia, I'll go there. I'm at a point now where I don't want to say no to certain stuff
Yeah,
because I did a lot of that during my time on the transplant list, and then the last 2 years I don't want to give up these opportunities because I don't know when they'll come again. I don't know if I'll be able to go to Australia again to go to represent either to represent the country on holiday. So it's why I've
yeah.
got these opportunities. I'm going to grab them with both hands.
What sports have you picked to do this summer in the British Games, if you remember?
I've done football. I've done squash. I think I'll have to remember. When I did it with Simon, I cannot remember how many more I did. I think I signed up for quite a few of them.
Are there some that you've played before, maybe some that you haven't? What I was told previously was that maybe pick one or two you think you might do well at, and then have a go at a couple, see if you like it, meet new people, just have a go.
I think he's signing up for the 10-pin bowling as well, which I was like, I didn't know that was a proper sport, but he says just sign up for it because it's something we can do. He's really Simon's really enthusiastic, and he will show you whatever event you got. He'll either know how to do it and what you need to do to compete in it,
Yeah.
or he will pass you on somebody else. So I wanted to do squash. I sometimes play with my brother, which he's very good compared to me, but I thought I'll have a go at it. I think there is some of the stuff I've missed out on because they are clashes with the football and some of the other sports. So that's where I'm a bit like, oh, I don't really want to miss out on it. But it's either football, which I more preferably enjoy, rather than do that.
I mean, hopefully you can be there. Hopefully you can compete and you're fit enough to do it, and you can do well. Hopefully win a medal for yourself, and a little bit of competition with other people who've been on this podcast before. It is time for the Transplant Take on Sport quiz, which each week I'll ask the guest 4 questions based on a sport of their choosing. One is a which is higher, there's 1 true or false, 1 what happens next, and 1 who am I. The aim is to score as many points as possible, and I'll keep score as the podcasts go by. There's been a variety of scores in here. There's been, I think we've had a 2, 3s and 4s, I think, so far, out of 4.
What should we get your first 0?
Hopefully not, but we'll see. It's your sport is football, if people hadn't guessed already. It's been the main focus of this podcast episode. Are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go for it. So question 1, which is higher? Is it the highest number of recorded own goals in a match in the history of football, or the highest number of goals scored by a single player in a single Premier League match?
Single player in a single Premier League match.
Number of goals scored by a single player in a Premier League match. This was by Andy Cole, fellow kidney transplant recipient like myself. Alan Shearer, Jermaine Defoe, Dimitar Berbatov and Sergio Aguero have scored 5 in a match. And unfortunately for you, the record for the highest number of recorded own goals in a single match is 149.
Oh, no. That's some definite match fixing there.
There's a story behind it. It's a Madagascan team called Stade Olympique de Lemern. I hope I said that right. They staged a protest at what they saw as poor refereeing against them in a previous fixture by thundering the ball into their own net over and over again in a league fixture against AS Adema. Hope I said that right again. The Madagascan Football Federation subsequently banned 4 of their players and their coach for the remainder of the season, while warning the rest of the team about their future conduct. And that was only 20 years ago.
Jeez.
149 own goals.
I thought he was going to say he was close, but it was 6 rather than 5. But no, 149 is a bit of a...
It's quite a hard question. It's a bit misleading.
That was a hard one. I thought it's normally sometimes they're normally quite close, but that one was just a landslider.
I saw that stat earlier and thought, how? But 2, that's never going to be beaten.
No, never.
Tough start. Question 2 is a true or false, and your statement is: the phrase "park the bus" was coined by the Chelsea players when Jose Mourinho had to park the team bus at the training ground. They're quite tough questions this week. I may have gone too hard here.
I see. I got all Ben's right last week.
4 out of 4.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that's false.
Correct. It is false. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's not that. It wasn't Jose Mourinho parking the bus. Literally parking the bus. So 1 out of 2, half right so far. Question 3 is what happens next, and as always, unfortunately you won't be able to see the video, but I'll try and describe it the best I can. And if anyone would like to go and watch the What Happens Next clip, that will be linked in the show notes of this podcast and the description on YouTube. And if I can get it on Instagram, that may be where it is, but sometimes copyright gets in the way and that can't be shown. So question 3, what happens next? And this is multiple choice, 3 options. During a Premier League match between Birmingham City and Newcastle United in 2003, referee Matt Messias blew his whistle around the halfway line to award a free kick to Newcastle on the edge of their own box. But what happens next? Is it A, when signalling who the free kick was awarded to, the referee catches Robbie Savage in the face with a heavy elbow, knocking him to the ground? Robbie Savage playing for Birmingham at the time. Is it B, the referee runs to where the foul took place too quickly, losing his footing and falling flat on his back? Or is it C, the referee suddenly stops, leaving Robbie Savage with not enough time to follow suit, clattering into the back of the referee, with both of them falling on top of each other in a heap? So is it A, he elbows Robbie Savage in the face, B, he falls over, or C, Robbie Savage runs into the back of the ref?
I think it's A.
It is. Robbie Savage does get elbowed in the face by a referee.
See, as a Forest fan, I could watch that on repeat when it was his time at Derby. sure it was on Soccer AM not long ago as well.
I think it's quite shown quite regularly on there.
Yeah.
He actually required treatment at the time, but thankfully he saw the funny side, as did Alan Shearer, who held a red card up to the referee, and Robbie Savage stood up and gestured as if he was to show him a yellow. Very hard hit. If it's a player, it's a red.
Yeah.
Arguably a red.
We've seen how Robbie Savage has gone down in the past. I think it wouldn't have been that hard.
Unintentional, but have a look at the show notes. There'll be a link there. It's a stiff elbow. Question 4, who am I? 2 out of 3 so far, going well. So who am I? You'll get 4 statements about a player. At the end of those 4, you can have a guess at who you think it might be. And if you don't get it, then there's another 3 clues with another 3 guesses. So 4 guesses to guess the player.
Yeah.
So this person was born in June 1971. They've played in France and England. They've won the World Cup, European Championship, Confederations Cup, and 2 Premier League titles, amongst other trophies. And they've played for Manchester United. Any ideas? So born in June 1971, played in France and England, so clubs in France and in England, won the World Cup, European Championship, Confederations Cup, and 2 Premier Leagues, and played for Manchester United, which is where the 2 Premier League titles came from. Any ideas?
I think I potentially know who it might be. Is it Fabian Barthez?
It is Fabian Barthez. 3 out of 4. It's Fabian Barthez, who is an interesting character.
Yeah, very, very, very short for a goalkeeper, if I remember rightly.
He was slightly before my time, only just, but he would kiss the head of Laurent Blanc before Champions League games, cut his sleeves off with scissors before the game. He became a motorsport driver. He did the Le Mans 24 Hours.
I actually have seen that. I was watching Sky F1, and his name did pop up, and I had to Google it to make sure that was the same person. I think he's an amateur endurance racer, so he does them 24-hour ones. He did one at Spa, the one I saw, which is ridiculous.
It's an interesting career. Fabian Barthez, he wouldn't do Premier Leagues, but United fans like myself, well, I didn't really watch him, but I'm not sure he's remembered too fondly. He had a few calamitous games.
Yeah, like I said, I can remember him in the early noughties when he was playing for him, and it was quite temperamental. Obviously, I think his height. I'm thinking the right person. He's not what you call as a tall goalkeeper. So I think he used to get chipped quite a bit, but yeah, like I said, he did make quite a few mistakes at certain points.
Just having a look now, see if I can find out how tall he was. 5'11".
Yeah, so he's not even the 6 foot. So
rare for a goalkeeper nowadays.
Yeah, very. Like I said, I can always remember he's probably one of the only keepers that couldn't touch the ball when he put his hands up.
3 out of 4 on the quiz, not bad, very good score. And I've not got the scores written down anywhere, but you'll be right up there. And one more question before we go. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and your attitude on life and dealing with the transplant and everything you've been through is really commendable, and I hope people take inspiration from it going forward. One more question before we go, and it's the question I ask everyone at the end of the podcast. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone facing a transplant?
I would say continue to live your life whilst you're waiting for the transplant, and if you want, you're on the list as well. Stuff can always be rebooked. Days out can always be rescheduled, but you can never make their memories again. Like it says, I made the mistake of being too scared to be too far from the house, missing out on days out, weekends away, holidays. Just live your life and make sure you enjoy it. Don't put it on. It's a stressful time as it is. Make sure you can fill that with some nice memories and some good times out.
Very well said. And there we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure you tell your friends, tell your family, anyone you like. Make sure you share it on social media. Help to spread the word. It all means a lot and helps more people listen to this podcast, which I would massively appreciate. It'd also be a huge help if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which are the most used apps to listen to the podcast on. If you could go on there and rate the podcast 5 stars on the show page. And if you rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, all 5-star reviews will be read out in this section of the podcast. Make sure you go and follow Transplants Take on Sport on social media. Facebook and Instagram are at Transplants Take on Sport Pod. Twitter is at TTOS Pod. You can get in touch through there if you'd like to come on the podcast as a guest, like Daniel has today, or you'd like to recommend somebody to come on that I'm able to get in contact with. You can also email transplantstakeonsport@gmail.com. Thank you once again to my guest today, Daniel Barnes. I've been Lewis Daniels, and you've been listening to Transplants Take on Sport.